My name is Emma and I'm 25 years old now. What I'm about to tell you happened when I was just 13 on a night that changed my entire life. It was August 2013, and Hurricane Elena was bearing down on our coastal town in South Carolina. The news had been warning us for days about the Category 3 storm approaching, but nothing could have prepared me for the storm that would tear through my family that night. I remember standing in our living room watching the palm trees outside bend at impossible angles as the wind picked up. Rain was already pelting the windows so hard it sounded like gravel being thrown against the glass. My mother was rushing around, securing windows and moving furniture away from the sliding glass doors. My father was in the garage hauling sandbags. And my sister Jessica, who was 16 at the time, was on the phone with her boyfriend, crying about how scared she was. "Mom, should I move my stuff upstairs?" I asked, watching the water already pooling in our backyard. My mother barely glanced at me. "Emma, not now. I'm busy." "But the weather guy said." I said, "Not now." That's when Jessica came running down the stairs, her face blotchy from crying. Mom, I can't sleep in my room. The window is making that horrible whistling sound and the tree branches scraping the glass. I'm terrified." My mother immediately dropped what she was doing and wrapped her arms around my sister. "Oh honey, of course. We'll figure something out. You shouldn't have to be scared in your own home." I watched this exchange, feeling the familiar ache in my chest that I'd felt countless times before. Jessica was the golden child. Jessica was the one who mattered. Jessica's comfort, Jessica's feelings, Jessica's everything always came first. "She can sleep in my room," I offered, trying to be helpful. "I'll take her room for tonight." My father walked in from the garage just as I said this, soaking wet from the rain. "Nobody's switching rooms," he said firmly. "Jessica needs her own space. She's preparing for her SATs and she needs her study materials around her." "But Dad, the hurricane," I started. "Emma, enough," my mother snapped. "Your sister is going through a difficult time. Her boyfriend might be moving away next year and she's stressed about college applications. She needs stability right now." I felt my face flush with confusion and hurt. "But where will she sleep if not in her room or mine?" That's when my parents exchanged a look. It was a look I'd seen before, a look that always preceded something bad for me. My mother turned to me with an expression that was somehow both apologetic and determined. "Emma, you're going to need to give Jessica your room for a while." I blinked. "What? Where will I sleep?" "We'll set something up in the garage," my father said, not meeting my eyes. "Just temporarily until the storm passes and we can figure out a more permanent solution." The garage. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Dad, there's a hurricane coming. The garage floods every time it rains hard." "Don't be dramatic," my mother said sharply. "We'll put your mattress on cinder blocks. You'll be fine for a few nights." But I wasn't being dramatic. I was being realistic. Our garage had flooded 3 times in the past 2 years during regular rainstorms. During a hurricane, it would be a swimming pool. "Please," I begged, feeling tears starting to form. "I'll sleep on the couch. I'll sleep in the hallway. Just don't make me sleep in the garage during a hurricane." Jessica looked uncomfortable for a moment, but then my mother's hand on her shoulder seemed to remind her of her position in the family hierarchy. "Emma, stop being selfish. Your sister needs this." Over the next hour, as the wind howled louder and the rain intensified, I watched my father move my mattress, my clothes, and my few possessions into the garage. He set the mattress on 4 cinder blocks, which raised it maybe 8 inches off the concrete floor. My mother brought out one thin blanket and a flashlight with dying batteries. "This is just for tonight," she said, though her eyes told me she was lying. "Tomorrow we'll figure something better out." By 8 p.m. the hurricane was in full force. The power had gone out and I could hear things crashing and banging outside. Water was already seeping under the garage door, creating a growing puddle that was slowly spreading across the floor. I sat on my mattress, hugging my knees, trying not to cry as I listened to my family inside the house. I could hear them talking and laughing in the living room. My father had set up the camping lanterns and they were probably playing cards or board games to pass the time like we usually did during storms. Except this time I wasn't included. Around 9 p.m. the water in the garage was already 3 inches deep. It was lapping at the cinder blocks and I knew it would reach the mattress soon. I was cold, wet, and terrified. Every crack of thunder made me jump. Every time the wind slammed something against the garage door, I was sure it would come crashing in. I tried the door that connected the garage to the house. It was locked from the inside. I knocked. Softly at first, then harder. Mom? Dad? The water's getting really high out here. No answer. Either they couldn't hear me over the storm, or they were choosing not to hear me. I knocked again, this time pounding with my fist. Please. The garage is flooding. Still nothing. The water reached the mattress. I stood on it, balancing on the soggy surface, and tried to call out louder. Dad. The water's on the mattress now. Please let me in. Finally I heard footsteps. The door opened a crack and my father's face appeared, backlit by the warm glow of the camping lanterns. Behind him I could see my mother and Jessica sitting comfortably on the couch, wrapped in blankets. Emma, stop making such a fuss, he said, his voice hard. You're fine. Just deal with it. But Dad, I'm standing in water. The mattress is soaked. I'm freezing. Your sister needs her space, he shouted, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in my father's eyes that scared me. It wasn't just annoyance or frustration. It was anger. Real anger. Directed at me, his 13-year-old daughter, for daring to complain about being locked in a flooding garage during a Category 3 hurricane. But your sister comes first, he bellowed. She has always come first and she always will. Now stop bothering us and figure it out yourself. He slammed the door in my face. I heard the lock click. I stood there in the dark, in the water that was now up to my ankles, listening to my own father tell me that my sister, who was 3 years older than me and perfectly capable of handling some noise, mattered more than my safety. That her comfort was worth more than my life. That's when something broke inside me. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly and completely. The last thread of hope that my parents loved me, that they valued me, that I mattered to them at all. It snapped. I was shaking, but not from cold anymore. I was shaking from a rage and hurt so profound that I didn't know what to do with it. I was 13 years old and my parents had just shown me exactly what I was worth to them. Less than my sister's preference for which room she slept in during a storm. The water was up to my shins now. The garage door was rattling violently. I knew I had to do something or I might actually die out here. Not because of the hurricane, but because my parents had decided my sister's temporary comfort was worth more than my safety. I tried the door to the house one more time. Locked. I tried the garage door opener, but the power was out. The manual release cord was underwater somewhere. I was trapped. That's when I remembered my Uncle Robert. Uncle Robert was my father's younger brother, and he lived about 30 minutes away. He and my father had some kind of falling out years ago. I never knew the details, but they barely spoke. Uncle Robert had never married, had no kids of his own, and the few times I'd met him at family gatherings, he'd always been kind to me. He'd asked me about school, remembered my birthday, treated me like I mattered. I had his phone number in my cell phone because he'd given it to me last Christmas and told me, if you ever need anything, kiddo, you call me. Doesn't matter what time, doesn't matter what it is. You call. With shaking hands, I pulled my phone out of my pocket. By some miracle, it still had battery. By another miracle, I still had 1 bar of signal. I called Uncle Robert. He answered on the second ring. Hello. Uncle Robert? My voice came out as a sob. It's Emma. I need help. Emma? What's wrong? Where are you? I could hear the immediate concern in his voice, the sound of him moving, getting ready to act. I'm at home. In the garage. My parents locked me out here because Jessica wanted my room and it's flooding and I'm standing in water and they won't let me in and... The words tumbled out in a rush, broken by sobs. There was a long, terrible silence on the other end. Then, in a voice I'd never heard from him before, low and dangerous, Uncle Robert said, You stay on the phone with me. I'm coming to get you right now. Do you understand me? I'm coming and I'm going to get you out of there. But the hurricane. I don't give a damn about the hurricane. You're a child and you're in danger. I'm leaving right now. True to his word, I heard a door slam on his end, heard an engine start. Emma, honey, keep talking to me. Tell me exactly where you are in the garage. I told him everything while I heard him driving, heard the windshield wipers going at full speed, heard him cursing at the weather and at my parents in equal measure. He kept me talking, kept me calm, kept me focused on his voice instead of the rising water and the howling wind. I'm about 10 minutes out, he said. The roads are bad, but I'm coming. You hold on, sweetheart. When I finally heard the sound of his truck pulling into our driveway, I wanted to cry with relief. I heard him get out, heard him pounding on the front door of the house. I could hear his voice, muffled but angry, shouting at someone. Then the garage door's manual release was yanked from the outside, and the door started to rise. Rain and wind poured in, but I didn't care because there was Uncle Robert, soaking wet, his face a mask of fury as he waded through the water toward me. "Come here," he said, and he scooped me up like I weighed nothing, carrying me out of the garage and toward his truck. That's when I saw them. My parents were standing in the doorway of the house, backlit by the warm light inside. My mother had her hand over her mouth. My father's face was red, angry. "You have no right," my father shouted over the storm. "She's my daughter." Uncle Robert turned, and the look he gave my father could have melted steel. "She's a child. Your child. And you locked her in a flooding garage during a hurricane." He was shaking with rage, still holding me against his chest. "What is wrong with you?" "She was fine. She was being dramatic," my mother called out, but even she looked uncertain now. "She's standing in a foot of water, Jennifer. She's been out here for hours." She called me terrified because her own parents wouldn't let her in the house. Uncle Robert took a step toward them, and I felt his whole body vibrating with anger. "You could have killed her. For what? So Jessica could have a quieter room." Jessica appeared behind our parents, her face pale. For a moment she looked guilty, but then my mother pulled her close, protective. "We were going to check on her," my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. "When?" Uncle Robert demanded. "When the water reached the ceiling. When she drowned in your garage." I was shivering violently now, and Uncle Robert seemed to remember I was there. He turned back to his truck. "I'm taking her. Don't call me. Don't come looking for her. If you come near her, I will call the police and report what you did tonight. Do you understand me? You can't just take my daughter," my father shouted. Uncle Robert opened the passenger door of his truck and carefully set me inside, wrapping his jacket around me. Then he turned back to my parents one last time. "I already did. And if you had any decency, you'd be grateful someone gives enough of a damn about her to make sure she doesn't die in your garage." He got in the truck and we drove away. I watched through the rear window as my parents stood in the doorway, getting smaller and smaller, until we turned the corner and they disappeared from view. Uncle Robert's house was farther inland, away from the worst of the flooding. It was a modest two-bedroom place, but it was warm and dry and safe. He brought me inside, gave me dry clothes that were way too big for me, and made me hot chocolate while the hurricane raged outside. "You're staying here," he said, not as a question but as a statement. "As long as you need to. As long as you want to." "They're going to want me back," I whispered, though even as I said it I wasn't sure it was true. Uncle Robert's jaw tightened. "Let them try." Then his expression softened and he sat down across from me at his kitchen table. "Emma, what happened tonight? That wasn't okay. That was never okay. And I need you to understand something. None of this is your fault. Not any of it." I started crying then, really crying for the first time that night. All the fear and hurt and confusion poured out of me, and Uncle Robert just sat there letting me cry, occasionally reaching over to squeeze my hand. "Why don't they love me?" I asked when I could finally speak again. "What did I do wrong?" "Nothing," Uncle Robert said fiercely. "You did nothing wrong. Some parents, some people, they're broken in ways that have nothing to do with their kids. Your parents' treatment of you says everything about them and nothing about you. You understand me?" I nodded, though I didn't fully believe it yet. How could I? I was 13, and my parents had just demonstrated in the clearest possible way that my sister's minor inconvenience was worth more than my safety. But Uncle Robert meant it. And over the next days, weeks and months he proved it in ways big and small. My parents did try to get me back. 3 days after the hurricane, when the roads were clear, they showed up at Uncle Robert's house. My father was blustering about rights and kidnapping. My mother was crying, saying they'd made a mistake, that they were worried sick. But I wouldn't come out of my room. I couldn't. Every time I thought about going back to that house, I remembered standing in that garage, pounding on the door, begging to be let in while my father told me my sister came first. Uncle Robert handled them. I heard raised voices, heard my father threatening legal action. But Uncle Robert had taken pictures of the flooded garage that night, had a record of my phone call to him, and had already consulted with a lawyer. He made it clear that if they pushed this, he would push back, and what happened that night would become public record. They left without me. Jessica called me once 2 weeks later. "Emma, Mom and Dad are really upset. When are you coming home?" I'm not, I said quietly. Don't be ridiculous. You're 13. You can't just decide to live somewhere else. Why didn't you say anything? I asked. That night when Dad was moving my stuff to the garage, when you could hear me knocking and calling for help, why didn't you say anything? There was a long silence. Then, it wasn't my fault. I didn't know it would flood that badly. But you knew I was out there. You heard me. And you didn't care. You're being dramatic. I hung up. She didn't call again. Uncle Robert became my legal guardian through a process I didn't fully understand at the time. There were court dates and lawyers and social workers. My parents fought it initially but not very hard. I think part of them was relief to not have to deal with me anymore. I was the daughter who didn't fit their narrative, who didn't perform the way Jessica did, who required actual thought and care instead of just being easy. So they let me go. And Uncle Robert took me in not as an obligation but as a joy. He enrolled me in a new school closer to his house. He learned how to braid hair by watching YouTube videos so he could help me in the mornings. He came to every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every band concert. He taught me how to change a tire, how to manage money, how to stand up for myself. More than that, he taught me what unconditional love looked like. It looked like driving through a hurricane to save someone. It looked like patient encouragement when I struggled with algebra. It looked like sitting up with me until 2 a.m. when I couldn't sleep because of nightmares about being trapped in that garage. You're going to do amazing things, Emma, he would tell me. You're smart and strong and kind. Don't let anyone ever make you believe otherwise. And slowly, painfully, I started to believe him. I threw myself into school. Partly because I genuinely loved learning, but partly because I wanted to prove something, to my parents, to myself, to the world. I wanted to prove that I was worth more than they'd valued me. That throwing me away had been their loss, not mine. I made honor roll every semester. I joined the debate team. I volunteered at the local animal shelter. I started a coding club at my high school. I was elected student council president my junior year. And all the while, Uncle Robert was there, proud of every achievement, big or small. That's my girl, he'd say, and I'd feel a warmth in my chest that I'd never felt with my parents. When it came time to apply for colleges, Uncle Robert and I spent hours researching schools and scholarships. He made it clear that money wasn't an issue. He'd find a way to pay for wherever I wanted to go. But I was determined to earn as much scholarship money as possible. I didn't want anyone to ever say I'd gotten where I was going because of handouts. I got into MIT with a full academic scholarship. The day the acceptance letter came, Uncle Robert cried. He actually cried, tears streaming down his face as he hugged me tight. I knew you could do it. I always knew. My parents found out somehow. My mother called me for the first time in 4 years. Emma, we heard about MIT. That's wonderful, honey. We're so proud of you. The casual tone, as if the past 4 years hadn't happened, as if she had any right to claim pride in my accomplishments, made my blood boil. Don't, I said coldly. You don't get to be proud of me. You didn't raise me. You threw me away in a flooding garage because Jessica wanted my room. Uncle Robert raised me. He gets to be proud. You get nothing. Emma, we made a mistake. You made a choice, I corrected. Over and over again you made choices that told me exactly what I was worth to you. Don't call again. I hung up and blocked the number. At MIT I thrived. I majored in computer science and economics, double majoring because apparently I enjoyed torturing myself with workload. I did internships at tech companies in the summers. I made friends, real friends who valued me for who I was. I even dated a little, though relationships were hard when you had trust issues the size of a hurricane. Uncle Robert came to visit me every few months, always bringing care packages and dad jokes. How are you doing, kiddo? He'd ask, and I'd tell him everything, the good, the bad, the overwhelming. He listened to it all with the same patient attention he'd always shown me. I'm proud of you, you know, he said during one visit my sophomore year. Not just because of your grades or your internships. I'm proud of the person you've become. You're kind despite everything that happened to you. You're strong without being hard. You turned pain into purpose. I learned from the best, I told him, and I meant it. During my senior year, Uncle Robert's health started declining. He'd always been healthy, active, but he started having trouble breathing. Tests revealed advanced lung cancer. He'd been a smoker in his younger years and now it was catching up with him. I wanted to leave school to come home and take care of him. But he refused. You have 1 semester left. You finish. I'll still be here when you graduate. He was but barely. I could see how much weight he'd lost, how hard it was for him to breathe. But he came to my graduation, oxygen tank and all, and he cheered louder than anyone when my name was called. "MIT graduate," he said afterward, holding both my hands in his thin ones. "Emma Chin, MIT graduate. Damn, I'm lucky I got to see this." "Uncle Robert. I need to tell you something," he interrupted, his voice serious. "I've been updating my will. When I'm gone, everything goes to you. The house, my savings, my investments. All of it." "I don't want to talk about this," I said, tears already forming. "We have to," he insisted gently. "Emma, I want you to know that you gave my life meaning. Before you, I was just going through the motions. But raising you, watching you grow, being part of your life, that was the best thing I ever did. You made me matter. You always mattered," I choked out. "So did you," he said. "I just wish your parents had been smart enough to see it." He died 3 months later, peacefully in his sleep. I was there holding his hand, telling him about my new job offer from a tech company in Boston. I think he heard me. I hope he did. The funeral was small, just me, a few of his friends, and some distant relatives I barely knew. I stood at the front, delivering the eulogy, talking about the man who had saved my life in every way a person could be saved. And that's when they showed up. My parents. And Jessica. They slipped into the back row during my speech and I saw them. My mother, older now, her hair grayer. My father, still stern-faced. Jessica, now 28, dressed in expensive clothes that screamed success. I faltered for a moment, my voice catching. But then I remembered everything Uncle Robert had taught me about strength and self-worth, and I finished the eulogy without acknowledging their presence. After the service, they approached me at the reception. My mother tried to hug me, but I stepped back. "Emma," she said, her eyes wet with tears. "We're so sorry for your loss. Robert was a good man." "He was the best man," I corrected. "He was the only parent I ever had that mattered." My father's face reddened. "That's not fair. We tried. You locked me in a flooding garage during a hurricane," I said flatly, my voice low enough that only they could hear. "Because Jessica wanted my room. You told me she came first. You chose her comfort over my safety, over my life. So no, you didn't try. You gave up. You threw me away. And Uncle Robert picked me up." "We made a mistake," my mother whispered. "We know that now. We've regretted it every day since." "Good," I said simply. "You should." Jessica stepped forward, her expression a mix of guilt and defensiveness. "Emma, it's been 12 years. Don't you think it's time to move past this? Family should forgive family." I looked at her, this woman who used to be my sister, who I'd once looked up to despite everything. "You knew I was out there that night. You heard me knocking. You heard me crying. And you did nothing because it benefited you. That's who you are, Jessica. That's who you've always been. And I don't forgive people who would let me drown for their own convenience. That's not fair. Life isn't fair," I cut her off. "I learned that when I was 13, standing in water in a garage, begging my own father to let me in while he told me you came first. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have actual mourners to thank for coming." I walked away from them and it felt good. It felt like closing a door that should have been closed years ago. A week later, I attended the official reading of Uncle Robert's will. His lawyer, Mr. Patterson, had scheduled it at his office downtown. I arrived early, dressed professionally, still numb from the loss. I was not expecting my parents and Jessica to be there, sitting in the waiting room. "What are you doing here?" I asked, unable to keep the hostility out of my voice. My mother looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Patterson invited us. He said there were matters in Robert's will that concerned the family." Family. As if they had any right to claim that word in connection with Uncle Robert. Mr. Patterson called us into his office and we all sat down. Me on one side, them on the other, like opposing armies. The lawyer was an older gentleman with kind eyes who had known Uncle Robert for years. "Thank you all for coming," he began. "I'll get straight to the point. Robert Chin left a very specific will with very specific instructions." He opened a folder and pulled out several documents. "First, to Emma Chin, Robert leaves his entire estate. This includes his house, valued at approximately $400,000, his savings and investment accounts totaling $2.3 million, his vehicle and all personal possessions." I heard my mother gasp. Across from me, Jessica's eyes went wide. $2.3 million? My father said. Robert had that kind of money? Robert Chin was a very successful investor, Mr. Patterson said calmly. He lived modestly but invested wisely. The bulk of his wealth accumulated over the past 30 years through careful financial planning. My mother's hands were shaking now. I could see her doing the math, realizing what this meant. But he never said anything. We had no idea. Why would he tell you? I asked coldly. You weren't part of his life. Or mine. There's more, Mr. Patterson continued. Robert also left specific instructions and messages for certain family members. He pulled out sealed envelopes. First to his brother, David Chin. He handed an envelope to my father, who opened it with shaking hands. I watched as his eyes scanned the single page inside, watched as his face went from confused to pale to red. What does it say? My mother asked. My father's voice was hoarse as he read aloud. David, you were my brother and I loved you despite your flaws. But what you did to Emma that night during the hurricane was unforgivable. You locked a 13-year-old child in a flooding garage to placate your other daughter's whims. You chose convenience over safety, preference over protection. You failed as a father in the most fundamental way possible. I took Emma in not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because she deserved someone who saw her worth. She has become the greatest joy of my life, and you missed every moment of watching her grow into an extraordinary woman because you were too blind to see what was right in front of you. You lost a daughter who would have made you proud. I gained one who made my life meaningful. I hope in your old age you think about that choice and regret it every single day. The money I'm leaving Emma? That's 12 years of child support you never paid, invested and grown. You gave me your daughter. I gave her a future. We are not even. The silence in the room was deafening. My mother was crying now, her hands over her mouth. My father's face was ashen, the letter crumpled in his fist. There's one for you as well, Jennifer, Mr. Patterson said gently, handing my mother an envelope. Her hands shook so badly she could barely open it. When she did, her voice broke as she read, Jennifer, you stood by and watched your husband endanger your child. You made excuses. You prioritized one daughter's comfort over the other daughter's life. That is not a mistake. That is a choice. Emma needed a mother that night and every night after, and you failed her. I became her family because you abdicated your role. She graduated MIT with honors. She has a promising career. She is kind and brilliant and strong. And you know none of this firsthand because you threw her away. Live with that. Jessica had gone very pale. Is there one for me? Mr. Patterson nodded and handed her an envelope. She read it silently, but I saw tears streaming down her face. When she finished, she looked at me with an expression of such guilt and sorrow that I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. What did it say? I asked, my voice hard. She swallowed hard. It says, Jessica, your sister was locked out in a hurricane so you could have her room. You heard her crying for help and did nothing. You benefited from her removal and never questioned it. You got the parents' attention, the resources, the support that should have been shared. You built your success on the foundation of Emma's exclusion. I hope you understand that every achievement you celebrate, Emma earned twice over with half the support. She is twice the person you are with half the advantages you had. That is who your sister is. And you will never know her because you never deserved her. The room was silent except for my mother's quiet sobbing. Mr. Patterson cleared his throat. Robert also left a final message for Emma, to be read aloud in front of everyone present. He handed me an envelope with my name on it in Uncle Robert's handwriting. My hands were steady as I opened it, my eyes filling with tears as I saw his familiar scrawl one last time. My dearest Emma, I read aloud, my voice thick with emotion. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope you know that my last thoughts were of you and how grateful I was for every day we had together. You were not just my ward or my responsibility, you were my daughter in every way that mattered. I never had children of my own, but I got to raise you, and that was the greatest privilege of my life. I paused, wiping my eyes, aware of my parents watching me. I'm leaving you everything because you deserve it, but also because I want you to understand your worth. You are worth $2.3 million. You are worth a house and a future and security. But more than that, you are worth love and care and protection. All the things you should have received from your birth family and didn't. Don't let anyone ever make you feel less than worthy again. Not your parents, not your sister, not anyone. My voice broke, but I forced myself to continue. To your parents, I say this in front of you. Emma is the best thing you ever created and you threw her away for nothing. You traded a daughter who would have loved you unconditionally for the convenience of not having to tell your other daughter no. That is your loss, not hers. He doesn't need you. She never did after that night. But you need to know what you lost so that you live the rest of your lives with that knowledge. I looked up at my parents. My mother was openly weeping now. My father's eyes were wet, his jaw clenched. Jessica looked like she wanted to disappear. Finally, I continued, my voice stronger now. Emma, my darling girl, you are going to do incredible things with your life. You already have. This money is just a tool to help you do more. Buy a house. Start a company. Donate to causes you believe in. Live a big, full, beautiful life. And every time your parents see or hear about your success, they'll know that they had nothing to do with it. They'll know they were wrong about you. They'll know what they lost. That is its own kind of justice. I love you, kiddo. I always will. Make me proud, though you already have. Uncle Robert. I finished reading and carefully folded the letter, tucking it back into the envelope. When I looked up, I saw my mother staring at me with an expression of such profound regret that it would have been satisfying if it wasn't so pointless. Emma, she whispered. You what? I asked, my voice calm now, steady. You're sorry? You made a mistake? You wish you could go back? She nodded frantically. Yes. All of that. Emma, if we could just... No, I said simply. No second chances. No reconciliation. No family reunions. You made your choice 12 years ago and I've made mine now. You taught me that I'm worth less than Jessica's convenience. Uncle Robert taught me that I'm worth $2.3 million and a lifetime of unconditional love. I'm going with his assessment. But we're your parents, my father said, finding his voice. No, I corrected. You're the people who created me. Uncle Robert was my parent. He's the one who raised me, who sacrificed for me, who loved me. You're just strangers who share my DNA. That's not fair, Jessica said, her voice small. We were young. We didn't understand. You were 16, I interrupted. Old enough to know that locking someone out during a hurricane was dangerous. Old enough to say something. Old enough to care. You just didn't because it benefited you not to. That's not youth. That's character. I stood up, gathering my things. Mr. Patterson, thank you for handling this. Please send all the paperwork to my address. I assume I'll need to sign some things. Yes, we can arrange that, he said, looking sympathetic. I turned to my parents one last time. I'm going to use Uncle Robert's money to start a foundation for displaced children and teens. Kids who've been thrown away by their families who need a second chance. I'm going to make sure they have what I had. Someone who sees their worth. And I'm going to name it the Robert Chin Foundation for Found Family. So every time you hear that name, every time you see an article about the good work it's doing, you'll remember the daughter you threw away and the man who proved you wrong. My mother reached for me. Please, Emma. Don't do this. We can fix this. There's nothing to fix, I said, stepping back. You broke something 12 years ago that can't be repaired. I'm not doing this to punish you. I'm doing this because you're not my family anymore. You haven't been for a very long time. I walked out of that office with my head high, leaving them sitting there with their regret and their guilt and their loss. And I never looked back. That was 3 months ago. Today I'm sitting in my new office. The one I bought with part of Uncle Robert's money, finalizing the paperwork for the Robert Chin Foundation. We've already helped 7 teenagers find safe homes and access to education. We've paid for 3 kids to go to college. We've provided therapy and support and, most importantly, the message that they matter. My parents have tried to contact me 47 times. Calls, emails, text messages, even a letter delivered through their lawyer. I've ignored all of it.